Welcome to the Heaping Scoop Podcast, where balance meets lifestyle, the best place to get your mind and body in shape. With your hosts, Andrew Shepard and Bryce Wiggins.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, we have a special guest, Cole Henry, which is one of Vanya and Reza's friends. He reached out to us and wanted to talk about a little bit about powerlifting, bodybuilding, and a little bit of his training regimen and how you should go about training. So welcome, Cole.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, when I saw Reza and Vanya on there, I saw them kind of getting into kind of the bodybuilding side of things. So I thought I could offer kind of a unique perspective when it comes to like the strength side of things. But as I probably will talk about later on, I think the two kind of go hand in hand when it kind of comes to my philosophy. So I know those guys from just being in Orlando. So that's originally where I'm from. And then I went to the University of Florida, where I believe Reza went as well. And we saw each other kind of in the gym, Southwest Rec at Florida. As far as like just like an athletic background, grew up playing tennis actually, but did some wrestling and football as well, but was not very good at either of those. But was a somewhat decent tennis player actually. Started getting into lifting probably when I was in high school. So freshman in high school, probably about 14 years old. But it was just a bunch of like knucklehead stuff, man. Like some of the routines that we did. I remember looking up like the captain, like what Chris Evans did to become the Captain America.
Yeah.
And obviously, like I know now it was just a bunch of steroids, but I thought like this routine was going to get me to become like Chris Evans. So I like convinced all my friends too, and we started doing that routine. It was just a ridiculous routine. It was like 40 sets of chest and arms and just like ridiculous stuff. So that's like how I got started. But I really liked it, but I didn't really start taking lifting seriously until probably my sophomore year of college. That's when like that was the spring of 2019. So I was probably around 20 years old, and that's when I started to take it a lot more seriously and start to train like really consistently, and started getting into programming and stuff like that. So I would say lifting for about 10 years, but not really seriously until, lifting seriously for about 4.5, 5 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. And did Reza have any type of influence on you when you went into the gym or no?
No, I knew he was like kind of doing his own thing, but really like my influence was like honestly like YouTube influencers, because at first I got into like bodybuilding. So I mean like influencers are like, I mean I don't really watch any now. But I don't know. It's tough because the ones that are like trying to sell stuff, I think you guys had a podcast on this recently, but like there's some bad ones and there's some good ones. And I think the good ones can actually help beginners get started in like a positive way. And that's kind of how I got my start. I was like, wow, that guy looks sick. I want to look like that. So that's like how I kind of got started with it. So.
Okay.
And just to confirm, you are a power lifter or you practice powerlifting?
Yeah, like recreationally.
Recreationally,
I'm
okay.
hoping like this podcast, like I can just provide value to people that are starting to get into strength training, because sometimes I'll post a video of a lift or something and I'll get several questions about like what my training involves and some of the philosophies that I have. So by no means am I like a competitive power lifter or anything like that. It's just purely recreational. But I feel like I have some, valuable ideas to share.
Got it. So you said you've been training for about 10 years, and you kind of switched it up after, the Chris Evans fad type of thing. I do remember that. It's everyone wanted to do it. And same with like Chris Hemsworth for Thor and stuff, like all those. Everyone wanted to just follow those. But later down the road, it's like, well, they're really taking a lot of these illegal substances just to even look that way. Also, like the V Shred guy, I'm sure you've seen him. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing all this, like promoting everything? But you've been training for 10 years. So when it comes to training regularly on a regular basis, how important is, mindset going into each lift and each workout?
Yeah, I think mindset when it comes to lifting is like often overlooked or underrated part of training. Um, so I think if you talk to a lot of experienced lifters, a lot of them will tell you that there's a certain mental hurdle um, when it comes to getting past a plateau, right? So let's say you're stuck on like a 275 bench or like a 185 overhead press, something like that, like respectable numbers, but certainly not elite by any means.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain mindset shift that needs to take place. And that is like truly believing that you're going to be able to achieve elite numbers. Now, I don't think that everybody can achieve elite numbers when it comes to like strength totals. It's going to depend highly on your genetics, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But I think having the belief is extremely important. Like going into every workout, believing that you are going to hit a PR. And there's also been like some research on visualization for athletes and like visualizing a certain throw or visualizing a certain golf swing. That player is actually more likely to obtain that result post visualization. So if you can picture yourself hitting that PR and truly believing that you're going to be able to progress, I think that's like a very overlooked, underrated part of training that not a lot of people get. A lot of people just kind of go into the gym, do the same thing over and over again, and expect a different result. When really you need to be pushing yourself and kind of when I'm in the gym, I'm blasting thrash metal and I'm like getting after it. And I fully expect, I'm not perfect in this regard. Like there are some days where I'll go in and just the mindset's not there. And very rarely do I hit a PR, but I would say 90% of my workouts, I fully expect to hit a PR when that's not necessarily realistic at my level of training. But you need to, that's the prerequisite before hitting a PRs, you need to believe that you're going to be able to do it.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of athletes, they'll like, for example, Lionel Messi, um, he plays very instinctually, right? It's like secondhand to him because he's like been with the ball ever since he was a child. So he's been growing up with the ball ever like forever and ever. And you just kind of know like where you need to be at the right time and moment in each play. And it just comes naturally to you. And I guess when you visualize it, it gives you more of a sense of motivation that you're going to do it, whether it be like the next day, the next week, or, within that same year of achieving like a long-term goal. So that definitely is overlooked. And I do agree with that. Um, so as far as your training philosophy, right? I know you wanted to talk about this. Like, what are some of the ideals that you kind of go in with how you create your program, if you have your own program, like in terms of you make your own, or do you follow someone else's, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I do follow my own program, but it's based on like other programs I've seen. So
Mhm.
I think that anybody's program, borrow ideas from people that you believe to be intelligent or know what they're doing. That's, anybody's program is not necessarily their own. It's just a bunch of borrowed ideas, right?
Right.
So like my training philosophy is very similar to like if you guys have heard of Martin Burkhan and like lean gains. I don't necessarily agree with it, like his diet philosophy,
Mhm.
but he's a Swedish lifter and he's had a blog for a while. But my philosophy revolves around 5 key movement patterns. So the first one is going to be a horizontal press, and for example, that could be a bench press, vertical press, which is like an overhead press,
Mhm.
or any you could do any variations of these, by the way.
Right.
A vertical pull, which for example would be like a weighted chin up, and then a squat variation and a deadlift variation.
Okay.
So those 5 key movement patterns are the center of the training. Um, and the other thing I should add is that those movement patterns should be compound movements, or for in the case of like the chin up, body weight exercise. So no machines. I'm not a huge fan of adding isolations, but I do like arm specific isolation. So like a bicep isolation exercise and a tricep isolation exercise, just because I don't think they receive enough stimulus from those 5 key movement patterns. Now you might be asking, okay, what about a horizontal pull? So I actually didn't mention that one, which would be like a barbell row. I used to incorporate those, but have found that with deadlifts and squats, the lower back fatigue is way too high. And that if you try to incorporate all 3, you're not going to be able to recover effectively. So all of those, that training, it's extremely low volume and it's prioritizes strength. So I like to see those 5 key movement patterns progress. Okay, so we need to be either adding weight to the bar for the same number of reps, or we need to be keeping the same amount of weight on the bar and adding reps. So if you decide that you're going to do sets of 5, then as soon as you hit a set of 5, let's say bench 275 for 5, then you're going to go up to 280. And then you might lose a rep or 2, and then, it's just basically double linear progression from there. And then once you hit that, top end of the set range, or the rep range, I should say, then you increase weight. And I want to see all 5 of those movement patterns progressing. So that's just a little bit about it. Like I said, it's extremely low volume. The reason I do that is because in my experience, when you start adding a bunch of isolations, those can take away from the progression of those 5 key movement patterns. And as a natural lifter, I think recovery is also often overlooked from the beginners and intermediate lifters. So when you're adding in all this isolation and machine work, it actually takes a toll on your recovery, and you're not able to progress as well on those 5 key movement patterns. Now, I should also say, I don't think this is the end all be all training philosophy. I'm certainly open to hearing other training philosophies, but this is what I've had the most success with, both in terms of bodybuilding and strength as well, surprisingly enough. So,
Okay.
So would you say that that is your like, some people do push-pull legs. So every day you go to the gym, do you do those 5 basic compound exercises, or you kind of split it
no,
up?
yeah, it's split into 3 days. So I only
Or three
train 3
days?
days. Yeah, I only train
Okay.
3 days a week. And people can look at my Instagram for some of my lifts, but I only train 3 days a week. So I do 2 of those movement patterns each day, and then there's some arm isolations spread out as well. So just like a normal bite, like I just do a incline dumbbell curl and then some dumbbell skull crushers, and those are the only arm isolations I do. And I think that type of training will get you 95% of the results of a truly like optimized bodybuilding program where you're adding in a bunch of different angles and stuff like that. I think just focusing on those key movement patterns will get you 95% of the way there. I don't do, a lot of people say there's certain necessary exercises like a dumbbell lateral raise, for example. It's often touted as like a must do exercise for bodybuilding. I will say right now, like my shoulders are probably my best body part, and all I do is an overhead press. Now, granted, I do have a 230-pound overhead press. So I think like the stronger you are, the bigger that you're going to be. Everybody that has a really big bench usually has a really big chest. Now, I'm sure you could find me some one-off examples of some genetic anomalies that have a really small chest and are benching 405. I've seen those guys before, but they're genetic anomalies and they don't happen very often. There's also guys with really huge chests that only bench 225. Again, it's a genetic anomaly. It doesn't happen very often. Now, I would also argue that the guy benching 225 would get an even bigger chest if he were to bench 315 instead.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that you don't implement a lot of isolation movements, because I mean, for one, my thinking going into that, like obviously you want to focus on strength, right? So you're doing more compound movements. You're not really isolating each leg, each arm, whatever it may be. But at the same time, I feel like you could be risking some type of I want to say ailments in your form, or you have some incongruencies, or one arm is compensating for the other, one arm is stronger, one leg is stronger, you know what I mean? So it's like kind of off-putting if you don't work on those weaknesses to kind of help push those compound movements. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's just how I kind of see it. That perspective. I don't know. I feel like you would need it to some degree, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I can respond to that. So like the argument is like you would see muscular imbalances if you were to
Correct.
only do those compound movements. Okay. So obviously n equals one in this situation, but I haven't gone through that in my experience, nor
Mhm.
have a lot of other people that have followed a training philosophy that's similar to mine. Um, you'll find that like as yeah, like I think you're always going to have muscular imbalances. But it's just the degree to which those imbalances present themselves. So like as a right-handed person, your right arm is most likely always going to be stronger than your left arm.
Mhm.
It's just like, are they both progressing at the same rate? So like if your right arm is getting significantly stronger than your left, like yes, that's a problem, but you still need your left arm to bench press or like overhead press. So both of them are increasing in strength at the same rate. So it ends up kind of being net zero. Like, yes, your right arm is still going to be stronger than your left, but it's to the same extent. As far
Right.
as like, sorry, what was your other question on that? Like,
No, I mean it was just the irregularities of like or imbalances, I should say, like of each side that you should implement at least in your training, I feel like. But I'm kind of looking at it as a longevity type of training more so because I feel like longevity um a small majority of people that are in the gym are working on that type of training. So like movements where they're more athletic and they can go deeper ranges of motion like in each of those movements. So like a squat, a bench press, whatever it is. You're going deeper and you're stretching out the muscle in its full range. I feel like that type of training doesn't it will um what's the word? Will gravitate more towards some isolation movements, whereas like strength, you're just working on compound and really building up progressive overload over time, like putting weight on the bar for a longer period of time. So you answered the question. I was just saying, like I'm just coming from more of like a longevity type of perspective, I should say.
yeah, if you're training for longevity, I will say you should not be squatting or deadlifting or bodybuilding for that matter. So you should not
You
be
don't think
doing
so?
any. Oh
No
no, no.
squats?
For longevity, I mean, there's plenty of other good exercises to do for if you just want to live a long life. Like the injury risk with squats and deadlifts are just too high in my opinion, especially as you get older.
Right.
But for like my purposes, trying to optimize everything and become as strong as possible and as big as possible, I think those types of movement patterns are crucial. But like I said, you can also do variations of those exercises. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a back squat or a deadlift. It could be a Romanian deadlift, or it could be a hack squat. Now, I
Mhm.
don't think a hack squat offers the same benefits as just a your good old fashioned barbell back squat, um, but can be useful. So
And I know that you mentioned genetics earlier. So, in your opinion, how important do you think genetics are in terms of like somebody being able to reach their peak strength? Like, do you think that their genetics plays like a cap in it? Like, you could train as hard as you want, but if your genetics aren't like the best, is there like a certain point where you're not going to progress any further?
yeah, so my discussion on this is going to start out really depressing, but then hopefully shed some light later on. So genetics is everything. It's the biggest determinant of how successful you're going to be as any athlete, right? Like no matter how good you get at golf, you ask like a professional golfer, um, why aren't you as good as Tiger Woods yet? You dedicate your entire life to this. You practice every day. Why aren't you as good as Tiger Woods? They would look at you like that's a ridiculous question. Like I'll never be as good as Tiger Woods, even though I've dedicated my whole life to this. I'm really, really good, but you'll never be as good as Tiger Woods. He was built in a lab literally to play golf. So like same things goes for like the most elite powerlifters or bodybuilders. Like those guys are just they were like built in a lab to be that type of athlete. So genetics is just so important for having a realistic having realistic expectations of yourself. So that's why like with anything in life, on like a deeper level, it's just really important not to compare yourself to others, because especially with like bodybuilding and strength training, everybody's kind of on their own path. And as long as you're improving and seeing improvement, that's all that really matters. It's a lot easier said than done, because with the age of social media and all these influencers and stuff like that, it's really hard to not judge yourself or not compare yourself to others. But that should be the metric that you're using, is like, are you progressing yourself? Because there's always going to be that guy that doesn't train as hard as you and that doesn't take it as seriously. His nutrition is garbage and he has a 6-pack and he's super strong. And it's just like, dude, like that son of a bitch, like you just get so mad, and it's like, you can't do that. Like, you just got to compare yourself to yourself. And everybody's kind of like, everybody won a certain genetic lottery. So I know that's kind of depressing for some people, but it's also kind of reassuring to know that, like, hey, if I just focus on myself and my own improvement, that's all I can really control.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously you guys have done a great job of limiting your exposure to social media influencers. So there's a term that has gotten floated around called main gaining. And this is kind of on a separate topic as far as like nutrition goes, but a lot of people think that as a natural, you don't necessarily have to try to gain weight in order to see progress, both from a bodybuilding and strength perspective. And I think that's complete nonsense. Every elite natural that you'll ever talk to from a bodybuilding perspective, but also a powerlifting perspective, has undergone some sort of weight gaining phase, often referred to as like a bulking phase, right? So main gaining certainly works if you're on steroids. That's great. But this discussion seems like it's geared towards natural trainees. So being in a calorie surplus offers the most anabolic state. That's when you're actually going to be adding tissue to your frame. And this recomping garbage, it doesn't happen unless you're a very new lifter that is, a beginner, hasn't been training for more than a year probably. Otherwise, you need to be actively entering a weight gaining phase in order to actually add tissue and add strength. Because like I said before, strength and muscle are highly correlated. So.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like, I guess when you first start off, or like say the person that's really skinny, they will probably have a hard time gaining weight. So hence the word hard gainer, right? I guess would you say it's like on the same level as that to some degree?
Yeah. So like main gaining is the concept that like you don't have to put on weight in order to, you don't have to bulk in order to gain muscle. Right. And like that is true if you are coming off of a long injury or something and you're not highly trained, because you'll see plenty of people that haven't lifted a weight before in their entire life, and then they go into the gym and see like this amazing progress and like, oh, I lost weight, or I didn't put on any weight at all and now I look completely different. Like, yeah, it does happen. But I'm talking for like intermediate to advanced level lifters, you need to be entering a caloric surplus in order to be adding tissue and strength as well. So the whole point of it was like trying to stay around the same body weight really just does not lend itself to significant progress.
And I guess the last question I have here before we wrap up is, do you have any like key message you want to leave with the audience so that they can like improve as like a person or in the gym or just on any level? Because I like the advice you gave earlier, talking about how you have to focus on yourself and not really look at social media. And when you mentioned the genetics part, saying how you can't compare yourself to other people because you are essentially a different person. So you're gonna change on a different rate as compared to other people. So do you have any advice you want to leave with people, our listeners today?
Yeah, for sure. So first, I would say focus on progression in the gym. This goes for people that want to be bigger, want to be stronger. Focus on progression, not how many sets you can do in the gym and not how much time you spend in the gym. Like I said, I only train 3 days a week. And I focus on getting stronger, because getting stronger is what's also going to lend itself to being bigger as well. If you only care about bodybuilding, you inherently have to care about strength as well. like you said, don't compare yourself to others. Everyone has their own genetic lottery. Um, it can be disheartening at first, but I feel that once you get more years under your belt, kind of in this lifting game, it becomes a lot easier to just look inward, and compare yourself to others. Or, I'm sorry, compare yourself to yourself rather than compare yourself to others. And then lastly, I would just say push yourself. I just see so many people going into the gym, um, 5 reps shy of failure, and it's like they're expecting that to make a change. And that can be great for somebody that's just getting started out, right? Like just going to the gym and moving around, that's great. But I'm talking to the people that actually want to see progress. They want to get massive. They want to get strong. Like you need to be pushing yourself close to failure, for most sets.
So what are those caveats of working to failure?
So there's plenty of like success stories from powerlifters that don't train anywhere near close to failure until their competition day. But in the context of my own training philosophy, where it is extremely low volume, like I'm only doing 3 to 4 sets of those exercises that I listed per week. So when you're doing that low volume, it's extremely important to go to failure because those are the only sets that you're doing throughout the week. I would never advise going to failure if your set volume was any much higher than that, because you simply just wouldn't be able to recover. That's why like a lot of people, when they tell me they're doing like a push-pull leg split, that's fine. Just that when you're doing, you start off with squats and then you go into a leg press and then you do leg extensions and then you do calf raises and then you do hip thrusts. It's just like, man, like how many sets are you doing for each of those exercises and are you progressing on those? Because I guarantee you by the second or third exercise, you're toast and you don't care anymore. So that's where I think adding in kind of all these extra exercises, all this extra set volume, can be kind of counterproductive. But when it comes to training to failure, especially it's actually, there's some recent research to support that it actually might be more beneficial for bodybuilding, getting closer to failure than it is for strength training. But in the context of my philosophy, where strength, you want to optimize strength and hypertrophy, I think training into failure with lower set volumes is really important. That's also just the way that I like to train too. I like to push myself in the gym, and I can't really imagine taking a set like 2 reps shy of failure. Even though definitely there are some contexts where that could be the smart thing to do.
Got it.
On your rest days, like, do you implement any like recovery techniques or you just like stay away from the gym? Or like, so what do you do on your rest days usually?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. So recovery is one of those things where it's super important, but people go about it the wrong way. So when it comes to recovery, there's a couple of things you need to focus on. One is time away from the gym. That's the best mode of recovery, is just not touching a weight. Do something else. Go for a walk, play some golf, do something else. The second thing is being in a calorie surplus. That will aid your recovery as well. The third thing I would say is sleep. And I probably wouldn't rank these in order of importance. It's just they're kind of all important.
Yeah.
The third thing I would say is sleep. So getting at least 8 hours a night, 7 if you can help it, ideally 9. Those are kind of the top 3 things that come to mind when it comes to recovery. Not the massage trainers, not the cold showers, like those. I mean, I don't know. To each their own, right? But like, there's just not a lot of evidence to support like that stuff actually helping in training recovery. Just you got to focus on, time away from the gym, sleep, eat a lot of food, and you should be ready to rock.
And when you brought up food there, so what does your diet consist of right now? Like, do you eat clean or do you just like eat like a regular person or like how restrictive is your diet?
So I'm what they call a perma bulker. So I've just been in a calorie surplus like for the past like year and a half or something. I have gotten very lean before in the past, because like I said, I used to be more focused on like physique and bodybuilding stuff like that. So I've gotten very lean before, but now, like I said, I'm prioritizing strength. So I have good, solid foundation for eating habits, right? So I think intake of fruits and vegetables is extremely important. Obviously, you want your protein intake to be high, but nothing crazy. Like for most people, 150 grams is just fine. to optimize hypertrophy. Obviously that depends on your body weight, a bunch of other stuff, but that's kind of a good ballpark. You don't have to overdo it. And then, yeah, the micronutrient intake is really important. So fruits and vegetables, not only for like performance in the gym, but also like mental health as well. And then once I get that foundation covered, I'm doing whatever it takes to gain weight. So that includes ice cream sandwiches, cookies. I try to make sure that stuff doesn't have like high fructose corn syrup, because that stuff has just been shown to like be bad for you. But pretty much anything else is kind of fair game, honestly. Like, it's a bunch of trail mix, like high calorie density stuff. And I'm just looking to get in the calories. And like another interesting point about the genetics thing is like what I'm starting to notice is like, dude, I can't put on any more weight for the life of me. Like I'm stuck at like 203, 205. And I mean, I'm 5'8" for reference. So like, that's pretty big. Like granted, I think a lot of that is muscle, but I'm probably like 22% body fat, something like that. I'm definitely not lean right now. But I'm also like not obese. I'm not really close to being obese either. And like, I've like tried actively gaining weight, and like the genetics thing is crazy, man, because people that like, that's why this, stigma against obese people, I think is completely unfair, because it's definitely a genetic abnormality, like from my experience. Now, granted, if I wasn't eating high protein and I wasn't eating fruits and vegetables every day, maybe that would be a different story. Maybe I would be able to gain weight because that food volume wouldn't be taking so much room in my stomach. But I'm not willing to sacrifice stuff like that. So like the obesity thing's crazy because I'm eating like whatever I want, just trying to get in calories. And like right now, ice cream, that sounds horrible to me right now. Like I don't want that, but I'm probably going to end up eating it just because I need to like maintain the current weight that I'm at in order to achieve the goals that I want to achieve. So yeah, like pretty much anything goes, but obviously if you're dieting, it's a completely different story. Don't want to include foods like that, but just make sure you're eating your fruits and vegetables, get in enough protein, but don't overcomplicate it. Like it's not that deep.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do that. They get bogged down in like, oh, I got to go on a fad diet. I got to do all these things, but it's really just simple, like protein, carbs, whole grains, if you want to throw those in there. And whatever else that I guess you enjoy eating.
There's a new fad diet. Yeah. There's a new fad diet every single day, right? It's just crazy. It's just, yeah, I mean, like it's a great question. It's not something that I really touched on in so far, but yeah, it's just if you want to lose weight, you need to eat less calories than you're burning. So whether that's broken down into protein, carbs, or fat, it doesn't really matter. If you eat one slice of cake every single day and that's all you eat, you're going to lose weight because that's all you've eaten, and the cake is probably like 800 calories and you're probably burning like 2,000. So like it's not the type of foods that you eat. But in terms of like mental health and like performance, definitely like you want to get your protein and micronutrients in and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's just caloric intake is what, controls your body mass. So
what do you think about the sauna? Do you use it?
I probably would use it if there was one at my gym. I have like kind of an old school gym here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's called Fitness Factory. Shout them out. It's a great gym. But yeah, like I honestly, I don't know too much about the sauna. I mean, it feels good. I would assume that doing it sparingly is probably beneficial. But don't really know too much about it and don't have a lot of experience with it.
Okay. Because you're saying like, oh, you don't care about, the cold showers or I guess cold plunge. I mean, they're not the same thing. Obviously, maybe up north, obviously your shower is going to be colder as opposed to down south, like in Florida or Georgia, those areas. So like it will be colder in colder areas, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure somebody could find some like bullshit research on like why the cold plunge is the greatest thing in the world. Like I'm sure that research exists out there.
You don't agree with? You don't think so? You don't think it's helpful? Cold plunge? I'd say first thing in the morning. I would say it will help, like with mental game, like discipline, like those types of things. Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I couldn't speak to that. I'm sure that's probably like it's you do you. Like if that's what helps you wake up in the morning and like get your day started, like power to you, man. Like, that's fine. It's just like, I hate it when people like nitpick all this research,
okay.
and
Yeah.
like act like it's the greatest thing in the world when like just stick to the fundamentals, man. Like, eat a lot of food, sleep, and just those are like the key things for recovering. Like, don't overcomplicate it with like all these massage guns and like cold plunges and like shit like that. I mean, like, just stick to the basics for your average person. But yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of research out there. Like, somebody's gonna just berate me in the comment section and like pull up a PubMed article of why cold plunges are the greatest thing ever.
No, but I agree with you on that point because I feel like a lot of those things, if you're like a professional athlete and you're taking it extremely seriously, yeah, you don't want to do those things. But at the end of the day, if you're just a regular person, like you said, going to the gym, trying to stay healthy, you don't need all of those stuff. Eat,
Yeah.
sleep, gym, keep it simple, you'll be fine.
Yeah, there's a quarterback documentary on Netflix, and Kirk Cousins is like getting into the ice plunge. That dude is like getting in a car accident every single day. You're going to the gym and like doing a few sets of dumbbell curls, man. Like, you don't need an ice plunge. Sorry. Legitimately, I mean, he plays American football is what I meant. Like, the dude's
Yeah.
getting into car accidents basically every single time, every week. So
Yeah.
obviously, like, yeah, he's trying to optimize his recovery and stuff. Like, dude, we're going into the gym and like doing a few sets of squats. Like, you don't need a cold plunge, man. Push yourself and get close to failure on most of your sets. Don't be a Tommy doesn't squat or a Johnny one plates. Like, put some weight on the freaking bar, and lift some heavy ass weights, because that's how you're going to get huge. That's how you're going to get strong. And yeah, just focus on your training should revolve around compound movements as a natural. None of this fluff and pump stuff that all the guys on steroids are doing. It should be getting into the gym, lifting some heavy ass weights, and just progressing from there.
Ronnie Coleman would be proud to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. The GOAT.
All right. Well, Cole, we appreciate you coming on and talking and speaking the truth to the people so they know what's up when they go lift next time. So thank you.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. This was a blast. So appreciate it.
No
Awesome.
problem.